Welcome to Diminishing Returns, the podcast in which we relentlessly pursue various movies with our own ideas for the sequel. This episode is focused around 2014 horror film and critics' darling It Follows, in which a mysterious, supernatural curse is passed to a girl through a sexual encounter. An evil humanoid entity pursues her at a walking pace and will do so until she either passes the curse to somebody else or until it catches up with her and kills her. This episode contains spoilers for The Babadook, A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, Fright Night, and of course, It Follows.
This week we are talking about It Follows and what follows it. So, It Follows. It was a bit of a breakout horror hit, was it not?
It was. It seems to be arguably the start of a new wave of horror. You know how horror goes through trends, and you've got your, big boom of Japanese horror based around technology that happened in the noughties with The Ring and One Missed Call and films like that. You had your zombie boom in the early noughties when zombie movies became a thing again, and slasher movies in the 80s. You got UFO, alien, sci-fi stuff in the 50s when people were scared about it. I read an interesting article on the AV Club that put the argument forth that It Follows paired with The Babadook are arguably the dawn of this new wave of horror that represents our modern times. They're both very similar films thematically. I don't know if you've seen The Babadook, either of you.
No. Yes, and I loved it. And it baffled me. I watched It Follows thinking it was also an Australian horror film because I just thought that this new wave of horror was coming from Australia. Apparently not.
Yeah, The Babadook didn't work for me. It got a lot right, it got a lot wrong, which is kind of how I feel about It Follows. It didn't quite come together for me, but what's interesting is both films are about relentless, unbeatable forces that characters essentially have to learn to live with. It's arguably very representative of the millennial angst that you can see in society nowadays. The global warming, the world's fucked. We're just going to kind of learn to live with it.
I guess, yeah, because it's never been the case before that in horror films like this, what is stalking and going to kill the victims is actually manageable. Like you can sort of, It Follows, you could live with this. If in reality, if this thing was following you, you could live. It wouldn't be a great life. And even in The Babadook, the whole thing is
not to spoil the ending. Well, no, to spoil the ending, she learns to live with it. It's a thinly veiled metaphor for depression, and she learns to manage it.
Because she manages the grief that she feels about her dead husband. And
That sounds interesting.
It is. It's an interesting film.
Yeah.
Didn't quite work for me, but I respect it for what it set out to do.
I loved it.
Well, I'll start. I'll tell you my opinions first.
Okay.
I hadn't seen the film at the cinema, but I remember seeing the trailer and thinking, oh, that looks a little bit different to your standard sort of teen horror film. That looked interesting. Never got around to seeing it. So then when we were doing this, I just watched it, especially for this. And I did enjoy it, but I think a huge part of that was this film style of it. Like the cinematography is beautiful. The lighting is just not something I usually pick up on, but the lighting is impeccable in every shot. Yeah. And the care that has been taken over the look of the film really sells it. Now, that's not something I generally pick up on. I'm more interested in the character. So the fact that I picked up on that, it must be really good. It must really stand out. In terms of the story, I really liked it. The slow pace and the kind of very kind of low downplaying tone of it all. It reminded me of a kind of cleaner Harmony Korine.
I'm afraid I haven't seen much of his work. I have seen Trash Humpers, which is
not that. I'm thinking more like
the one film I've walked out of the cinema on in my life.
Well, I'm thinking more like Gummo,
where
this kind of sort of kooky suburban lifestyle, but it was like cleaner than that.
Yeah.
But that kind of feeling to it. What it comes down to is this thing that's following it, and what that is a metaphor for, and all that. And it didn't quite come together for me. Obviously, I
want to talk about that.
There's
I'll save that.
It hasn't really got an ending, which is kind of It doesn't quite have a resolution.
The ending. I mean, essentially, what I'm going to say in a minute is that I hate the film. But I think its ending's quite good conceptually. I'll get to it in a minute. I don't know, Calvin, do you want to talk about your thoughts?
I love the ending in terms of I love the last few shots. The thing about when they attract it into the swimming pool and
that's a load of
I hate
bullshit.
That.
Yeah,
that's the only part of the film I do hate because
the actual ending.
Oh, the actual ending
story
is beautiful with those two holding hands, and you just see something you don't know who it is. And
yeah, I like the actual ending, and I hate this film.
I love this film. I think it's. I love the Babadook.
Yeah.
I really like this kind of new wave of slow build.
Yeah. Do you want to? The thing is, I hate this film more. The reason that I hate this film so passionately is that it was so close to being this complete and utter masterpiece. I love so much about this film. I love the concept. I love so much about how it's put together. I love the ending, and I love all these moments, and it's genuinely fucking scary, which is really rare. Frankly,
when I first watched this film, it was quite a while ago now, and we were watching it. I was at a friend's house, and we were just watching it on some streaming service, and he had a really bad internet connection, so it kept failing or whatever. And we only managed to get about an hour into the film, and I remember it was the end of the scene on the beach, where it attacks them, and we just thought, we'll just leave the film here. I was enjoying it, and then for about 2 months afterwards, I didn't finish watching the film for about 2 months. And it stuck with me so much.
Well, that's it.
I was having nightmares.
Yeah, it's honestly, a brilliant concept. It's genuinely really creepy, conceptually, and how they put it together. And that's why it pisses me off. I don't get this upset about films like Transformers 20. I don't fucking know, but they don't bother me because they're shit, and they're shit. This film could be one of my all-time favorite films had it been slightly different. And as it is, it just aggravates me.
I will say that when I finally did finish watching the film, my nightmares were alleviated, and it's never sort of crossed my mind in the street since. Despite me still loving it, but I think there is something to be said about how they plan to sort of entice it into the pool and.
That was. I've got a list here of complaints with the film.
For me, the tone and style of the film really appealed to me, and the story didn't quite add up, but I did enjoy it.
See, my main complaints are basically that the film doesn't make any sense within its own internal logic. It just didn't work. I mean,
in what way?
Well, so basically, my list of complaints. Number one. It seems to like toying with people. It'll often just stand and watch, and there's that point where it just runs its hands through the main character's hair, which I think really undermines it. I think it would be far scarier if the thing was a relentless thing that just followed you. The fact that it's kind of got thoughts and it can think just leads you to... I don't know, that annoyed me.
Like when the guy was warning her, he's just don't let it touch you, and it follows you all the time. So then how could you ever sit with your back not against the wall where where anything could sneak up behind you, because no one else is going to see it, so no one looking at you is going to go, look out behind you. So don't sit on the beach. So when it's going to get to her, it's as soon as it touches her, it's going to kill her, surely.
Exactly.
And then it just starts
about and it should have just killed her. Given that there's a point where it goes into that kid's bedroom and it just jumps on him without a second. It doesn't make sense. It's inconsistent.
It is inconsistent,
what wound me up.
but I like the inconsistency because you don't know quite what it is going to do. There's that girl at the very front, the one who runs out of the house and then she goes to the beach with the car lights on, and then there's that great cut, and then she's just mutilated, her legs are bent backwards, and so there's obviously some element of playing with the prey a bit.
See, that's what I don't like. That to me, the main point of it, the main reason why it's scary, it's the same exact thing that made zombies terrifying to me as a child. It's this idea that they're this relentless force. You can run as much as you want, and they're not difficult to outrun, they're not difficult to escape, but at some point you've got to sleep. You can't deal with it forever, and they're going to catch up with you, and it's this relentless fear. What really wound me up with it as well, and again undermines that, is the fact that it feels completely incorporeal. it feels like it can teleport around. The idea, I think,
If
is
it's
supposed to
just
be...
walking.
Yeah, the idea, I think, is supposed to be that it just walks slowly after you. But that means that, like that bit at the start where the girl drives off, she should have been all right for days. It catches up with her implicitly within a few hours. And
I don't think that's clear.
It's
not clear how far away she drives.
I never got the sense that they were able to put considerable distance between themselves and it. And
Well, I think
of annoyed me as well.
I think the idea is that it will just walk, and you could probably just fly to a different continent and you'd be all right for a bit.
I've read interviews with the director where he says that he imagines it being able to get on an airplane and get on a bus and stuff. But
I think asking questions like that and that sort of thing is taking it too literally, because anything like this has to be an analogy. It has to be a metaphor for something else.
Yeah,
because if it's literally just this kind of unnamed, unmotivated monster who follows you, then it's a pointless.
But again, it's
film.
inconsistent at times,
which is why it never quite added up for me.
At times, it is played as this incorporeal force, which would work. But then
how do they get on the roof?
At times, it's At times, it's played completely like a physical thing. It has to smash a window to get into the room. People can feel it. You get the sense that if they threw flour over it, it would be stood
they do.
there
They
with
throw a
flour.
towel on it.
But then it goes in the swimming pool at the end, and they can't see it, which doesn't make any fucking sense because there'd be a humanoid shape where there's no water in the fucking pool.
No, but I knew you were going to get hung up on all the logic stuff, and it's not that. It's if you can't switch off the logic of it and just sort of enjoy the atmosphere and the overall, because it's like a dream, it's like a nightmare, and that's fine.
It's established to be capable of thought and intelligence, and yet it doesn't behave remotely clever. It could just walk up to its victim looking like their mate or like a normal person for the first time, but instead it chooses to look like really freaky, creepy people.
Okay, that's something that does bother me about it.
Well, I was working on the assumption that its physical presence was generated by the viewer, as in the person who was being followed.
The thing is, Basically, I would have been okay with this if they had some sort of hint that maybe it was intentionally generating fear, if it was some kind of monster that lived off of your fear. But then if that's the case, why does it kill that boy immediately? Stuff like that.
It does kill that boy while as his mother, while it's appearing as his mother.
And it's sometimes, like that kid being its mum, his mum. It doesn't try to scare him. It just kills him immediately. So again, it's inconsistent. It would be so easy for it to just kill people if it wanted to, but it's bad at its job. So either I wouldn't mind if there was a hint of this or that. What I thought for a while, given that the people were so creepy, was that they were meant to be previous victims or something. And I was thinking, that'd be a cool idea. It can take the form of people it's killed, which would explain why they're all in hospital gowns and covered in blood.
They're always covered in white.
Yeah, I would prefer that. Really, but then that kind of goes out the window. I think it's when they get to the beach and it takes the form of one of her friends.
I can't remember. There's a point where
I didn't realise until I read a synopsis online.
It's one of the other girls who's there.
Yeah.
And then you see her walking in the background as well, and you're like, oh wait, she was.
But I mean,
there.
all those girls look alike anyway.
Yeah. Then there's the swimming pool scene, which what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
What were they? They've already tried shooting it in the head, which didn't work. So why do they think electricity is going to work?
That's the only sequence of the film that I really can't stand by.
And then they shoot it in the head, and it somehow works, at least temporarily.
Yeah.
But when they shoot it in the first place, it knocks it down. So obviously it takes the hit,
and then gets
just pass
immediately
through it,
up.
but then it gets up and so it's not doing any.
Yeah.
How does it? Well, that's the trouble. You're not given any backstory or any kind of reality behind it, which is why I think it cannot be addressed as a literal thing, and it has to be a metaphor.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the only way the story
thing.
can work.
To be fair, it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't begin to make sense if you think about how it started and all that as well. But I don't mind that. Yeah, then there's the actual killing scenes. Whenever it actually kills people, it's really stupid. It's not scary. I think it's far more effective when you see, for example, the girl at the start who runs away and then you cut to her corpse. That's creepy. When you see it jumping on that boy and grinding up against him, it's like unintentionally funny. It's weird.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
I would rather we hadn't seen that.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's trying to say that it kills all of its victims by shagging them at the same time, or what, or if it shags the life out of them. But then in which case, why would it have bent that girl's legs back?
Then
people like that.
And then there's the bit with the guys on the boat at the end. The implication being that she's thinking about passing the curse to them to kind of buy some time.
I love that.
But then afterwards, she behaves as if she's still cursed immediately. And apparently there's a deleted scene that shows her changing her mind about that, but they left it out, which I think is just bad filmmaking.
No, I think that's good. I think that's ambiguous. It's like, did she do that? Didn't she? And
her behaviour doesn't add up if she did.
With the boy that she ends up with at the end, because she sort of shags him and then he goes and there's that scene of him like driving by some prostitutes and it's sort of like, well, does he do that? Because it is a moral question. It's like, I know that this is, in me, is following me, and do I pass it on? Do I not?
The first guy, why does he bother to abduct her and tie her to a wheelchair after he sleeps with her? Because he could have been arrested for doing an actual crime. He could have just said, hey, why don't you come with me so I can show you this cool place? He like bounds and gags her. It's bizarre that he
needs to bound and gag her because of the way. I mean, if you know,
she wouldn't stay there and listen.
Yeah, he needs to get her down there so he can and move her. He needs to be able to move her around so he can say, "Look, it's that thing down there." And it's like because if
he could say, "Hey, we're going to be on a quirky indie movie date. Let's go check out the space." You could take.
She would run away, or she would let it get close to her because you would think
he had to convince her that it was true.
He just slept with her, so I reckon she'd be up for like any sort of quirky indie movie manic pixie dream girl bullshit where they want to go up and look at a
that would get her up there. It wouldn't like keep her there while he's explaining to her the
again, because it's a thing off down there and he'd say she's not going to see it and go and run all the way away. He'd say look
maybe
at this
she would. It's
well this is what I was when I was trying to find some sort of metaphor of what it all meant and the whole sex connection, like that whole thing is a violation. And he dumps her on the street and she's crying. She's supposed to be raped. Like what is
this is another point that I'm
and so that's what I was trying to find when I was trying to find out what does it represent and
I'm going to come back to that.
I couldn't
I will go into it here, but I want to cover some other points before I get sidetracked.
But not just but her response to it where she's upset and then the police are called and everyone's like, oh no, what's happened to her, and she gets depressed and all that sort of stuff.
There's another problem I have with it is where are all the adults?
This
is a massive complaint, right? Because it seems to be trying to make a point about angst and growing up and so forth, which is fair enough. Give the adults unmuted presence, but then when the thing goes into that kid's house, she breaks a window. She's screaming at the top of her lungs. The guy goes, "Mum, what do you want?" As if so. His parents are obviously in the house. Because he hasn't even opened the door yet to see it's Mum. He's like, "Mum, what the fuck do you want?" He doesn't go, "Mum, I didn't know you were back yet." And yet, the parents are nowhere to be found. They've heard this massive noise, someone breaking in. She's now the prime suspect in a murder, but there's no fallout from it.
That is
I was expecting for her to get arrested and have to escape from like a prison cell with the thing coming and it being...
That is every horror film like about young people ever, though. It's like complaining about Halloween.
And most of them are shit. I mean...
But again, I think you can't take the film literally like that. And in that sense, and the fact that all the parents are missing... or our background or whatever, that's what gives it that otherworldly this isn't quite real sense.
It's about young people and it's about coming of age and it's about first sexual encounters,
adolescence,
and sexual liberation,
exaggerated emotion, hormones and all that sort of thing.
You don't need the adults in there at all.
I mean, you do for that scene to make sense just logically.
I think
but that's what I'm saying.
All you need is a bit of dialogue where he goes, "Oh, my parents are away this weekend," and
I think that's what I mean. I think you're getting hung up on the logic of it. Like, how does it travel?
I am. But my point is the film at every turn didn't make sense from a logical point of view, and it was just
But it's not supposed to. I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna like logic dictate your enjoyment of it, then it's not gonna. There's
a lot of films that follow their own internal logic whilst.
But the film is ephemeral. It is. Things aren't quite real, and you don't know what she's seeing and what's.
It doesn't make sense. Why does shooting it kill it the second time, but not the first time?
Well, I mean,
I don't think it does. To be honest,
it stops it enough so that they can get away.
Can't defend that.
And to be honest, I just felt like the direction was very inconsistent, and I do feel like the director didn't care at all about that, but. Frankly, in this kind of film, I like to see.
I think this is a director in complete control of what he's creating. It's like even down to
I know. I'm not saying he's not in control of it. I'm saying he didn't care. I don't think he cared, and that wound me up.
Right. Okay. But he's not caring about the logic of it.
I know.
That's clear.
It's
so
pissed me off.
But that's fine. That's like I don't think that makes it a bad film.
It really wound me up. Then to go back to what you're saying about what it's about. I mean, the general consensus seems to be that the film is about
STDs, and
But it can't.
I don't think it
doesn't
is.
Work.
I don't
See,
think
that
it
doesn't work, and the logic of that not working bothers me because that is what the film has to have.
That's
has
what I
to
mean.
work.
I don't
The
think
physical world logic isn't important.
I feel like the STD element is a completely muddled bit that kind of goes nowhere, and to me, I think the film is clearly about angst. The angst that comes with growing up, having to mature into an adult.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Of which sex and virginity are obviously a part of.
Well, that's why I think in that first scene, she likes this guy, she wants to have sex, she thinks he rapes her, and so she has great regret and shame
Does
over
he rape
it.
her? They have
No. But I'm talking about as a metaphor. As he violates. They do have sex, and it seems to be fine. But then he kind of does something to that violates her. And what I'm talking about is if we see the whole thing as analogy,
The thing is,
then she feels regret and shame.
Yeah.
She even tries to confront him about it, and again, that doesn't quite work either. But that's why that felt like a rape scene. That's why later on, when she has sex with someone she's not really bothered about, it just comes back to haunt her.
Yeah,
and
that is a metaphor for the angst of having sex.
Well, that's it.
When you're a teenager,
and exactly, and the peer pressure and stuff that comes with it.
But by trying to make it work as a kind of creature and a solid idea, it doesn't quite come
exactly.
together.
I like the metaphor. I like that adults have a muted presence in the film, and I love how well it kind of conveys that, but then it completely destroys the logic of the film's internal universe. It's the same reason I don't like David Lynch, because his films might be a great metaphor, but they don't make any fucking sense. And to me, the talent of a good writer is to convey emotional metaphor and ideas within the constraint of a plot that makes sense.
It did feel to me like someone who had a great idea, and then they had to compromise this to make this work, and they had to do this to make this work, and it didn't. And by the time they finished it, it kind of fell apart a little bit. And it made me think of when I watched Southland Tales, and I'd seen Donnie Darko previously, obviously, but Southland Tales, I really liked loads of aspects of it, but it didn't come together. And it was like obviously a much bigger world that he was trying to start. And it just felt like this is a really great filmmaker, storyteller mind. This hasn't quite worked. And I felt the same way. But I'd like to see what he does next. That is kind of what I took out of it. And I'd like to see what.
To be honest, I really want them to make a sequel to It Follows, and I really want the original director to not have any involvement with it whatsoever. I want them to churn out a franchise, hand it off to like a fan of the original film.
Well, that's why it wouldn't work like that. It doesn't. It's not because it's not a monster. It's an analogy, and it works.
But it could be a monster, I think, and I think that
but
is
it would
the
be
way to.
But if it was, it would be a shit film.
No, it
wouldn't be a shit. It would be the same old horror film that was happened to be one.
I think
film.
that is the way to go, because I don't think this director could do a sequel to this film, because I think he said everything that he's going to say.
He's talked about it, but I agree. I don't quite feel like he's got it in him to do.
I'm amazed that there hasn't been a sequel out, maybe even already. If not,
I'm amazed they've not announced it. Yeah, I think the only reason that he must own enough of the rights to kind of say, well, look, I'm going to do it if it happens.
That's what I'm assuming, because I mean, when this first came out, people were talking about it like it was going to be the next Paranormal Activity or Saw, or you know.
And it easily could be.
Oh,
and it's a film where, although you might take away some of the artistry in the process, I think I would much prefer the sequel.
I wouldn't.
I mean, I would be fine with that, because that's, sequels by their very nature are going to be,
Diminishing Returns.
Well, there we go. But I mean, I think in terms of like making this into a horror franchise, the big mistake is to have it shapeshift. And shape-shifting consistently, like we touched upon earlier. Like, I would be fine with it if it was like, oh, it's the past victims or whatever.
Yeah, I'm really... Yeah, it really wound me up. In fact, that's part of my pitch, is to just completely ignore the continuity and retcon that so that they are the past victims, because I just want to establish that as one of the rules of the franchise.
To be honest, the way I would approach it would be, what I didn't like about the film was that other people were aware of its presence, as in she could only see it, but then it did physical things that they were aware, and proved its existence. Yeah. If I could have walked away from that film with the possibility that it was all in her head, I think I would have.
That would have worked.
That would have explained any inconsistencies.
Exactly. That would have waved away all the problems.
But it doesn't.
But as it stands, you're left thinking, well, could they catch it in a cage?
Yeah, because it seems to like not be able to open locked doors. And even when they're in the beach house at the side, her friend kicks in the door, right?
Yeah.
he's like trying to get to them, he kicks in the door, and it comes through that. So it's sort of like, well, if they just did put it in a cage, trapped it, would that work?
Yeah, and that's the thing.
But it can also take the form of like a 7'7" man who could smash through a lot of things. Like, could it take the form of a,
well, that's it.
a huge tank?
Can it build up enough momentum? Yeah, actually, no, obviously it can, because it like hits that boy and he goes flying.
It's obviously got super strength, because you don't.
Exactly.
Not many people could throw a human being that far with a one blow.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
That's the inconsistency.
I would love.
I
would love to see a film that plays the game, so to speak. I like it when horror films have characters who establish that they're dealing with something and try to figure out the rules and try to figure out how to beat it. And it just seemed like this was a setup for that sort of thing, and there's not really any of it there.
I will say that is my main issue with the film, and that, I mean, we talked about the whole pool scene, because that feels like that should be the sequence where they try to sort of understand it.
And maybe they do trap it or something, and then it escapes, and they go, oh shit, we weren't expecting it.
Yeah, they need to think that they've overcome it, and then they actually haven't. Or
but
whatever.
Instead, their plan just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
but this is where it all starts. The metaphor all breaks down, because like I'm trying to make it fit this kind of. It represents the adolescent angst. What I really like is the fact that, and what I really like as a message is that an adolescent boy will, if it means he can have sex, he will happily put his life in grave danger.
Yeah,
that is the meaning of this film. I like that.
Yeah,
because that is true when you're 16 or whatever it's supposed to be.
But it's just things like can they break the chain if they have sex in a circle? If person A fucks person B, fucks person C, fucks person D, then person D fucks person B, and the thing kills person B, followed by D and C, does that mean A is now safe because they've broken the chain, or will it revert back to the original person?
I think it just keeps going back until it has no more.
I think we're going to get this in sequels.
and you know what constitutes sex is the other thing. I'd be intrigued to...
Well, the directors come out and said that it's like, because people were like, well, what's oral sex, gay
condoms,
sex, like condoms, but apparently he's. I think
according to him,
and I think a part of that is just him trying to be.
But I think the fact that he's answering those questions makes me think less of what he was doing with it.
Yeah.
Perhaps
I
there is no deeper meaning, because it sounds like he's just
similar. It's similar to him coming out and saying, I think it can probably get on the bus.
Exactly. What he should be saying is like, you completely missed the point.
Exactly.
Like, it's not supposed to be literal.
I do think
so maybe
less of him for doing that, because then it does try to make it, it does make it seem like he has this grand plan or something, and that he obviously
because if he tries to explain the logic, that means it's relevant. It's his story. So.
But I'm not sure how like flippant he is with that, like with the whole sex thing. We said, oh yeah, it all counts. Like if he's just sort of saying it to like appease people.
Yeah, I mean, if put it this way, if it was my idea, I would have come to the conclusion that like all sex counts as well. To be honest, I think anything involving an orgasm or whatever, anything involving a connection between two people.
Because someone wanks you off, does that?
I don't know it. I certainly think gay sex
transmission
and
fluids
condoms would all count.
Before we get into the pictures, if we could just talk about something that I do love about this one, which is the timelessness of it. And I know that they made a very conscious effort, because there's one point
it's like a flip phone that looks.
It looks like a shell.
Yeah.
It's like really. It's like an e-reader. She's like reading. Yeah. Is it Dostoevsky or something?
But then there's like the old cathode ray TVs. They've all got.
Yeah. I mean, it goes beyond that though. The music is a clear throwback to the 80s.
Oh yeah,
it's I love the theme tune actually, but it's a clear kind of weird setting this in this timeless throwback era.
And this is why I kind of appreciated watching the film, the first part of it, when I first did over the crappy internet connection, because when it's not like beautiful HD whatever, it actually looks like, oh, this could have been like something from 20 years ago or 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Like Halloween, John Carpenter and all that.
But yeah, like that again, that is an element that represents the fact that this shouldn't be taken as reality. It's not supposed to be a real world. But if that is the case, how much can I take from the creature and what it's doing? Because again, it just doesn't add up. Like what is in her head, what's not, what's literally happening, and that's what my major problem with it. It didn't quite add up, and I think I liked it more for its style and potential than its actual end result.
That's kind of how it felt for me. I got angry because it wasted that potential and wasted that style. It was so close to getting it right and being this kind of masterpiece.
Whereas I just like it.
Okay, so as I was saying, to me it's not about STDs and sex overtly, like most reviewers and people seem to think and suggest. It's very much about the angst of growing up and dealing with this, unstoppable fact of life and things you can't change and learning to live with them. And I love that the ending of the film is essentially they learn to live with it, and that's it. Together they kind of just think, well, do what we can.
I mean, you could make an argument that it is HIV, that's what it is.
I mean,
you can't get rid of HIV by giving it to someone else.
What's it saying about HIV?
No.
It ticks a lot of the boxes, but it doesn't seem to be saying anything about it. And that's kind of the point. And what I'm basically saying is I feel like it's done the angst side of things. I don't feel like it's done the STD side of things. So my pitch is all about the sex and the STD side of it.
Great.
Now, are you guys familiar with the sort of wave of homoerotic 1980s horror that came?
Like Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2.
Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2.
Interview with a Vampire.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. Most of them aren't particularly notable examples. Most of them are kind of bargain bin, straight to video crap no one remembers. The two notable examples I've pulled up are Fright Night, in which Chris Sarandon plays a kind of vampire, and Jonathan Stark is his kind of Renfield, but they play it like a gay couple. And Stephen Jeffries in that film actually went on to become a gay porn star. He played Evil Ed. And Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, which is one of the most fascinating films I think I've ever seen. It's utterly bizarre. It feels like half the crew knew what they were making and that it was a gay allegory, and half the crew didn't. It feels like the writer wrote a gay parable and handed it to a director who was utterly oblivious to what was going on. They cast a blatantly and now openly gay lead actor in the role as a presumably straight character who's got a girlfriend. There's a scene where he tries to have sex with his girlfriend but can't because his tongue gets possessed by Freddy and just goes a bit weird, and he runs off scared like I can't.
No, specifically he runs off scared to his male
friend. His male friend who he has a very homoerotic relationship with. His best friend Ron. Freddy's possessing him and he shouts, "Something is trying to get inside my body." He cleans his room and does a little dance at one point, closing the drawer with his ass. There's a point...
So gay.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there's that popper thing that he jumps off the bed and he has this popper thing by his crotch, and then he goes like... just as the girlfriend comes in.
Yeah. Jesse and Ron are playing basketball at one point, and Ron tackles Jesse and pulls his trousers down, exposing his bum, and they fall to the ground and
laugh.
They laugh. He has a nightmare sequence where he wanders into a leather bar, and the school's gym teacher is there in bondage gear.
Well, that's not a nightmare. That's real. That happens. Like,
is it?
Yeah.
That's not one of his dreams.
Well.
Doesn't Freddy...
He's in a haze. He's in like a haze. But yeah, no, because the gym teacher is there, and then the gym teacher's like, "You're not old enough to be in here." So he takes him back to the school and makes him do laps in the middle of the night, and then he tells him to hit the shower.
Yeah.
And then Freddy possesses the shower equipment and straps the gym teacher down and then whips him with the.
I've got a note here actually. I looked into it and I must have forgotten, but the writer, cast, and much of the crew did know what was going on. This includes Robert Englund. The director didn't, so that's exactly what I said before. But obviously, I'd already read it and forgotten about it. My film's a prequel set in the 80s. It's about a lead guy who's blatantly gay, struggling in his heterosexual relationship. He has a very homoerotic relationship with his best friend though. His friend's very cool, goes out clubbing and stuff, and one day there's just a fundamental shift in the guy's personality. He seems constantly on edge, getting up in the middle of class and leaving, running away mid-conversation, disappears for days on end, that sort of thing. But he does turn up to another important friend's birthday party. He and the main guy share an intimate moment. They're trying to... Basically, the main character, who I've called Freddy for the sake of having a name, is trying desperately to figure out what's going on with his friend, Brian. Brian is vague and elusive, but Freddy consoles him, and one thing leads to another. They kiss and more. Freddy wakes up massively paranoid regarding what people will think, especially his girlfriend. He's on edge. The two leave to go and get some food in the morning. There's some really creepy looking guy walking towards them, and Brian freaks out and runs away. As the figure approaches Freddy, instead, Brian freaks out, runs in to save him, shouting. They both run away. Brian's like, oh my God, you can see it? What the fuck? They get on a bus and we have a bit of exposition explaining that this thing's been stalking him since a night he spent at a friend's house a while ago with 2 other friends. He says he watched as it forced its way inside the house and killed his friends in front of him, one after the other, only to start coming after him. The implication being that one of the people was cursed and slept with him, and they kind of went in a circle. But he assumed it was a sort of demonic punishment for his gay lifestyle, and that he's basically been dealing with this, whether or not being gay is immoral and blah, 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 for the last few days. He would have given up his gay lifestyle, but his genuine feelings for Freddie were indulged, and he couldn't say no.
He was just too gay.
Yeah. And he realises, makes the connection that sex passes it on. They feel that they're being punished for their gay lifestyle, so they go to find a religious official who will discreetly cure them of their gay. So they ride the bus as far as possible, and for the sake of discretion, go and find the first church they can out in the middle of nowhere at the end of the line. They speak to the pastor, or who do you get at church? Is that
Depends what type of church.
Whatever man it is, the vicar, priest man. No, it's probably Catholic. What's that? Priest.
Padre?
That's the military.
And the guy is far more liberal and progressive than they were anticipating, and tells them that God may not approve of their lifestyle, but he would never do something like this.
A gay priest? I can't believe it.
Hate the sin, not the sinners. And he tells them that their predicament sounds more like some sort of ancient demon, something abhorred by God, not something that God would agree with at all. So he agrees to help them find a way to stop it. It catches up with them at this point, and they flee in the guy's car. It turns out he used to be involved in some exorcisms back in the day, and he goes to find his sort of master priest who's above him, who dealt with that, the exorcist man.
Max von Sydow.
So on the way over there, the two continue to explore their relationship, wrestling with morality, ethics.
You said wrestling with each other.
And each other. On the way to the exorcist, they continue having sex, passing the curse back and forth. As their relationship grows, they realise that they want to share the burden and the risks that come with it, as an expression of their love.
That's really nice.
The exorcist that they arrive at is far more condemning of their gayness, but ultimately agrees that the demon is the greater evil and must be stopped. Together, the 4 of them come together to try to beat it. They set a trap involving making it visible for the priests with flour or something like that. They use a load of exorcism cliches to try and stop it. Power of Christ compels you, that sort of thing. And it just walks up to the priest and kills him brutally. The other priest is like, oh God, God's a load of nonsense, isn't it? What God wouldn't allow this? And Freddy's about to be killed, but the priest runs in and is able to tackle it away, which buys them time to flee. He gets killed in the process. This is interesting because it establishes that it will kill other people on the way to the... and they continue on the run. One night, Freddy wakes up to find Brian gone. He eventually tracks him down and finds him living in squalor. They have a heated argument regarding how Freddy doesn't want this life away from Brian, and how he'd rather die with him than live alone. How it's wrong for Brian to pass the curse to others, but Brian is basically taking the curse with him and keeping it away from Freddy to keep him safe, and passing it on to others and trying to extend his life. Brian threatens to jump from the window and says that if Freddy ever comes back, he's going to kill himself, and so he's going to die either way, and it'll be as good as murdering him. So reluctantly, he says that he loves him too much. It's the only way he can protect him. So reluctantly, Freddy eventually agrees to go, seeing no other option, returns to his home life, straight in inverted commas. There's probably a montage where he kind of explains things to his girlfriend and his family, who thought he was dead because he's been missing for days at this point. But essentially he goes back to living a lie, constantly watching over his shoulder. Then we cut forward to him in the future. He's got family, some kids, lives a life of misery, unhappy. And then I'm not really sure, to be honest. Something like he comes home one day and the thing's killed his wife because he's inadvertently passed the curse on to her because he still thought it was a gay thing. I don't know. There's one of those horror movie it's coming back for you thing.
No, that would make sense though, because if it killed the last person down the thing,
Yeah.
then it was going for him, but he had sex with
Yeah,
her before
yeah.
it got to him. Then yeah.
Exactly. But I also quite like the idea of them being at dinner and having a kind of, oh, you don't even love me, and then it like walks up to them in the restaurant and kills her in front of him, and it would look like a heart attack to onlookers. But yeah, some sort of cheap horror, oh, it's coming for you again ending. But I like, basically I just like the idea of playing up the STD.
I really enjoyed that, and it wasn't half as logic policey as I thought it was going to be. I honestly thought going into this, your pitch would be, well, a bunch of scientists get it in a room, and they
put diodes on it, find out that it's an alien.
I thought that's where you'd go, but
it's basically trying to take the basic concept and the metaphor and stuff that comes with it, whilst making it adhere to a coherent set of rules. It's basically what I wanted out of the first film.
The only change I would make is that I would set it even earlier than the 80s. I would probably go back to like 50s or 60s. Just to buy into the exorcism more.
Obviously, I wanted it to tie in with the AIDS pandemic.
Ah, right.
And I wanted to
that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
I wanted to play up the idea that there's kind of this rumoured disease out there that, there's whispers of something on the gay scene anyway, and then this thing comes, and I don't know, I just wanted to kind of play off of that.
That didn't occur to me, but that makes actual perfect sense. So yeah,
that's why he's called Freddy.
Oh,
so yeah,
okay.
Who's next?
I think it's Alan.
Okay, so I did struggle to get a hold on this one because I was trying to figure out what the sort of meaning of the film was.
Yeah,
I've sort of decided that it didn't manage to get one.
Yeah.
So I've kind of had to.
That's what I did. I kind of said, "Stuff your meaning." I'm doing my own.
But I was trying to figure it out. I mean, I don't like this thing, and it is a horror trope, but that they have sex, you get killed. So this whole society thing that sex is evil or morally wrong or anything like that.
Well, I mean, that's one difference of, and coming from, I'm a big slasher movie buff and all that. So the rules are all very much, you have sex, you die. When it follows, I actually kind of like how they're sort of, she is sort of cavalier to sex at the beginning anyway, and it's just maybe I'll have sex with this guy, maybe not.
Yeah, I don't think It Follows was in any way condemning sex in the way that some old slasher films are. I mean, they use it as a tool to prolong their life once they're infected. It's, there's ethics that come into play with killing other people to prolong your own life, but I think sex is treated as a fairly neutral part of the process. It's just kind of, it happens to get you through sex. And
I think that but in general the sort of negative element of sex is like, you have sex, you die.
Yeah.
So I don't agree with that particularly. I think sex is all right. So I wanted to concentrate on what the real negative effects of having sex. So what's the worst thing that can happen to you after you have sex?
You have a baby.
AIDS.
You have a baby.
Which
is a lot worse than AIDS because you can't
Sorry, you can't.
I'd rather have AIDS than a baby, basically. But
my God.
At least you can medicate AIDS.
No, you can medicate your baby, Alex.
You can
only a couple of days.
Put it for adoption.
Anyway. What, Frankenstein? You know what happens there?
You can get these pills on the internet.
Anyway. The negative effects of having sex. A baby. So my film is called Shit Follows. So...
That's a question. What would happen if someone passed it on to a woman and she got pregnant?
I was going to say a baby.
It's a valid question. I think Alan's pitch might explain.
No, I don't. What, do you get it in the womb? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, does it spawn a weird, demonic baby? Or...
Well, yeah, I mean, does it go after the baby? Does it have to wait until the baby's out before it kills that person? It
just kills
it's weird that it's like a game of tag as well. It's kind of like... I want to know if the orgasm's important. If you just pop your dick in someone, does that work? Or do you have to, do it to completion?
I've never done it to completion. I wouldn't know.
I would think the orgasm would be the important thing, but given that all kinds of sex apparently count.
But then she didn't look like she came when he did it.
I don't think it ever matters if the woman.
The woman doesn't matter.
So there's the problem. Does the man have to?
It's all
does there
about
have to,
man. Of
Yeah,
course.
and it can't just be there has to be an exchange of fluids because condoms, according to the director, don't stop it.
True.
But I suppose there's nothing in the film to suggest condoms have an effect either way. If condoms do work, the kids are fucking stupid for trying it.
Okay. So, a young adolescent male has himself some sex. Everyone's happy with that. He's had a good time. Until
Is it his first time or is it?
yes.
Okay.
So, actually, that's not relevant at all. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Sometime later, he's visited by an apparition of a baby. Now, but only he can see the baby, and when he tries to tell others about it, they just think he's crazy, right? Now, the baby never tries to harm him, it just follows him constantly, and it smells of shit and cries all the time.
Just keep him awake at night.
So obviously it disrupts his entire life. Yeah, he can't sleep, he can't sort of keep a job because it's just, he can't concentrate on anything. He can't maintain a normal lifestyle. He tries to run away. He plans to go travelling around the world, so he runs away. But just before he's able to go, the baby steals all his money. so he can't go, and he's just stuck there. After a while, he just gives into it, and it becomes part of his life. So he accepts it for what it is. But he can't do anything interesting with his life or pursue his dreams because of this thing that just is like this anchor on him. But he settles into his routine, and he accepts his fate as a victim of this, and so that's that. Fast forward like 30 years later, and it's become such an ingrained part of his life that he's used to it, and he's come to rely on it as his idea of normalcy. And then the baby suddenly disappears. But
The baby is a baby for 30 years.
I was going to say, it doesn't grow up slowly.
No, it's a metaphor. The baby disappears. But the baby reappears sporadically around every 6 months when it needs somewhere to stay.
With some washing.
And only calls when it wants money. and that's that. That's the real negative consequences of sex.
I feel like we're all working out our own personal issues through this film. Like, it's getting quite interesting.
Well, that was shit. Mine, by the way, is called It Followed. Because it's a prequel. Calvin, what's yours?
Mine is a sequel. So let's pretend that I'm a crass movie producer. I just, I want 12 Insidiouses out within 2 years. I want 12 Paranormal Activities and 15 Annabelles or whatever they're on now. So that's this is the idea of just taking it and sort of taking out some of the metaphor and artistry and just sort of having a more straight up sort of slasher thing.
Okay.
And I want to make it quickly. So I'm going to set it all in one mansion with a cast of sort of nobodies. Maybe we'll have the odd TV star in there somewhere. So basically get it out quick and cheap. Don't worry about going into the backstory too much or even the rules too much because, we need something in there to keep people back for part 3.
Like Paranormal Activity.
Exactly. That's the model. So this is either It Follows Part 2 or It Follows Again. It Follows more.
It's following.
It's following again. It's still following.
It won't die.
And we start with a young, attractive leading lady, late 20s. Let's call her Cara, because the person I had in my mind was Cara Delevingne. Or Deverine? How do you pronounce her surname?
I don't know who you're talking about.
That woman from, is she in one of those teen Divergent films or something? Anyway, I think it's Cara Delevingne. And she's in a car with a girlfriend. Let's call her Jen. Because I had Jennifer Lawrence in mind for this. So Cara and Jen.
Jennifer Lawrence as herself.
No. Oh no. These were the actors that I thought. So let's just give them any name. And all right, names aren't important. So Cara and Jen, and they're driving to a remote mansion in the middle of nowhere, and they're kind of sort of normal middle class girls. And through dialogue, we learn that they're driving to the home of some mega rich, super elite guy who is infamous for throwing eyes wide shut style sex parties in different cities in rented places, so he travels around. And Cara and Jen are about as promiscuous as your average 20-something in a city, so the fact that they're going to an orgy they're kind of blasé about, but they promise not to sleep with each other, as that would be weird. Because I kind of like how because it is passed through sex is a big deal in It Follows, but the main character, she's sort of, well, I'll probably sleep with him. I don't, the sex is only really a big deal to her nerdy friend who really wants to sleep with her.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's a big deal if you can't get it.
Yeah.
It becomes more important.
Pretty much. So I just sort of like the idea of being quite casual about that sort of thing. They get to the mansion, and it's full of like beautiful young people. Let's say there's about 30 people there, including the rich guy and a really pissed off butler who hates his boss because he has these parties all the time.
It's played by...
Well, he has to clean up with the
Yeah. He's sick of it. He's got to do all the cleaning.
Is this butler played by like an old English actor?
Why does the
Ian McKellen.
we could have him.
Sir is having an orgy again. Oh, bother.
So the main guy appears, and the orgy kicks off, and we have a montage of lots of writhing bodies and etc. People are doing drugs, and Kara's, off her tits, and just having a grand old time. The lights are out, and it's all dark, so we don't really keep up with who's doing what to whom and whatever. But eventually it finishes, and we see the group sort of disperse around the mansion, and people are in different rooms and stuff, and they're just sort of hanging out on the come down. And then there's a knock at the door, and the butler goes to open it, and there's nobody there.
Ooh.
But of course it is it, and it has entered the house in the form of a wet naked girl. So people don't really pay much attention to it. It's sort of like, oh, there we go. So the bulk of the film proceeds with it. I mean, it will kill a few people around the place, sort of a few gratuitous death scenes, stalking, that sort of thing. Sort of like, oh, who's it going to go for? And then eventually everyone, cottons on to what's going on, and they're all super freaked out, but can't.
Are you going to have a sequence where it's sort of walking a few steps one way and then has to like turn around and start walking the other direction and keeps changing because everyone's just like doing everyone so quickly it can't even keep up?
Well, actually. That'd be a good... I mean,
Fuck's no, over here now.
Because that's like... I mean, it's sort of interesting to think about, like, how does it... I always sort of imagined it as like a radar in like a video game or something, where you're the dot in the middle and there's like a red dot and it is the sort of heading towards that red dot, and then if that changes it'll sort of like turn and go somewhere else. So you can have fun with some of that. Anyway, they're all like trapped because of a storm or whatever at the moment. So they can't get out. And eventually the group must get together and figure out what the heck's going on. When the rich guy confesses all to everyone, and that the reason he has these orgies is because he contracted this thing years ago. His logic is, if I keep having sex, it'll, And he never thought it would actually catch up with him. Now it has. So he's been doing this for a while. He's like, I don't even know how it could catch up with me because I like travel around so much. I've got offices, homes everywhere, and we could maybe have humorous inserts of like it like on a plane, just sort of like stood at the back, like walking against the back of the plane or whatever, or hanging onto the leg of the plane, something like that. And over the course of the movie, everyone is killed off, including Jen and the mega rich guy, as the butler ends up facilitating it. So at some point they will trap it in a room and maybe start figuring out something about it. We'll maybe drop some, hints, clues as to what, how the logic of it works. But the butler ends up being on its side because he's sick of these fucking orgies. And he's like, really...
Not because he's like got a problem with his, master killing countless people and he's rising against.
That would have been more...
He's just sick of wiping up cum.
That maybe would have been a more sympathetic route for me to go down. Probably more of a moral choice, which would probably be better, considering there's not much else going on metaphor-wise in this synopsis. Kara and Jen... No, Jen hasn't been killed off yet. Kara and Jen are the last people left in the house, which shocks both of them as they conclude that it means that they, must have had sex with each other then because, everyone had sex with each other and we're left, so it must be us. So Jen...
Can you make them sisters?
Yeah, maybe. Because Jen is killed, and Kara ends up killing the mental butler. And eventually we end up with Kara alone in the house, and she runs and she's trapped in the corner of a room, and it starts approaching, and it's all very tense. But it stops and climbs out the window next to her and just starts walking off into the forest, implying that Kara was so off her tits that she didn't actually have sex with anyone at the party, but she contracted it without even knowing, like, from someone, like, she doesn't know, because she can see it. So
Crossfire.
Yeah.
So it's gone all the way around, looped around again.
So it goes off, and she's like, well, who the hell did I get it from? And that's how we end the film. So I guess maybe there is a metaphor in there about, like, don't have casual sex.
No, have more.
No, I
casual
was going to say have
sex.
more casual sex.
have more casual sex. Yeah.
As much as possible.
Yeah.
I think that would genuinely work as a kind of crass cash-in sequel.
Like,
that would be a legitimate plot.
Yeah, that's because you've got to have an orgy in there.
I'd enjoy that. I like that you've addressed one of the questions I had actually with the rules, which is if you pass it on to someone else and then you sleep with like 10 other people, does it have to go through all of those people to get back to you, or does it have to be following you at the time for you to actually actively pass it on? Would it if it killed the person that you passed it on to, would it then skip past those 10 people you'd slept with whilst it was following someone else?
Yeah, it'd go back to you. Yeah, it just goes down the chain.
Yeah, yeah.
So then when it's following you, you have sex with someone, you pass it.
So most of the people that he has sex with in these orgies are actually getting away with it scot-free.
Well, yeah, he has an orgy, so he has sex with someone, then they have sex with someone, they have sex with someone. And
so
and it passes it on.
But then it has to catch up with him in order for the next orgy to be of worth.
I mean, that's
but
why...
if he's always travelling around, then...
That's why he's so surprised.
He can ensure that it probably won't actually ever catch up with him.
That's why he's sort of thinking that, there's no way it could ever get...
So you don't have to have sex with loads of people. You just have to have sex with one person who will then quickly have sex with another person who then will quickly... So you need to sort of be in a group of loose people.
Yeah.
Who will...
Which is why an orgy would be,
I think that works.
Well, I'd watch any of those.
But I think your question from earlier, Saul, about if like person A has sex with B, has sex with C, has sex with D, and then D goes back and has sex with B.
Does that break the chain?
Let me think.
Unless it just jumps you and goes back to them.
Well, that's the thing. It could either just jump straight back to the previous person before the people that it's killed,
because
or that breaks the chain and you've beaten.
Or what if A has sex with B, and then before he gets to B, B has a car accident and dies? Is that it?
I feel like Final Destination is like a good sort of comparison to where this series could go, because Final Destination is a horror series where the rules are sort of ambiguous at the start, but then the sequels sort of play with, well, if death's out to get me and I have a baby, does that mean it skips me and goes to the next person? Or if I like die and then am resuscitated, does it skip me and go to the next person? So I think you could you could have 12 sequels dealing with these rules.
I would like one of them down the line to be a bunch of scientists putting diodes in it and figuring out how it works. I'd enjoy that.
Because as much as I like, and I know that we like discussed like, the logic of it in It Follows, I do think that if you do sequels, that's where you have to go. Because I think this film could stand alone. If it's going to stand alone, just be what it is, and that's fine.
Yeah, the director, I think, spoken about the possibility of doing a prequel that explores the origins of the thing, and it doesn't sound like a good idea to me.
I think when you go into the origins,
it's a bit... I dabbled with that in my pitch with the idea that it's some sort of demon and playing with that, but then I also was very conscious to make it so that was just how the priests would perceive it, and it doesn't actually say it is a demon or anything. In fact, it's probably not, because it just walks up to them, doesn't give a shit about their crucifixes. I do hope they make a sequel to it.
I hope they don't make a sequel.
I
should be a
want them
standalone.
I want it to.
It's one of those things where I think I would respect it more if it was just a standalone thing and that was it, but at the same time I do want to see where they would go with it. I'm too curious.
I think there's scope to make a really good sequel that is better than the first one. And like I say, I hope someone other than the original director does that. I feel differently about the Babadook. I mean, for the sake of balance, I hope they don't make a sequel to the Babadook. I doubt they will. But It Follows just seems like a franchise.
It Follows is directed by he's a young director,
but David Mitchell.
Yeah.
I don't think that David Robert Mitchell, and I don't think that his first film was called The Myth of the American Sleepover, and by all accounts, It Follows without the monster.
I think I'd probably like that. I'm gonna have to search that out.
And on that basis, I don't want him to do another one, because I think I can handle one film like this. I couldn't handle a series.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I want him to go off and make other things.
Yeah, and
ideas.
He can be an executive producer on this series and leave
make a bit of cash out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that was our thoughts on It Follows. If you have any, you can join us on our Facebook group.
You can follow us on Twitter.
Ooh, follow us. Dear. Twitter follows. No, it doesn't. So that was our thoughts on. Stop it. That was our thoughts on It Follows, and you can follow us on Twitter or on Facebook, and you can discuss our ideas. You can give your own ideas, which would be quite interesting for this one, because I think this one is kind of open to a lot more interpretation than some of the other things we do. Yeah. So please come and get involved. And all right, that's all for us for this week. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.